Millions of despairing men, women, and little children, victims of a system that makes men torture and imprison innocent people.
You cannot shake hands with a clenched fist.
Produced by a nuclear exchange would be carried by wind and water and soil and seed to the far corners of
the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
We're not saying that planet Earth is coming to an end. We're saying that planet Earth is about to be refurbished, spaded under, and have another chance to serve as a garden for another civilization.
Most of the people in here are just your reflections. They're your mistakes.
1776 will commence again if you try to take our firearms.
1 million of the planet's 8 million species are threatened.
You are what you repeatedly do. Therefore, excellence ought to be a habit, not an act.
Your lives and the credibility of the United Nations is at stake.
Epstein didn't kill himself.
The reason this is such an interesting time is not only because we're on the threshold of the end of this civilization.
They're trying to take you out with bullshit.
The experience of the past 2 years has proven beyond doubt that no nation can appease the Nazis.
To those who can hear me, I say, do not despair. The misery that is now upon us is but the passing of greed, the bitterness of men who fear the way of human progress. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die, and the power they took from the people will return to the people. And so long as men die, liberty will never perish.
In the language of the U.S. Department of Defense, these are unidentified aerial phenomena.
Roswell's a very interesting place with a lot of people that would like to know what's going on.
There is very compelling evidence that we may not be alone.
This is the Garden of Doom.
Welcome back to the Garden of Doom. This is episode 46, and this week we are joined by our friend Sharon Pesner, who's been with us before. If you recognize the name, it's because she is part of our All-Star Land of the Lost panel. So if you like what you hear, you're going to hear her again next week because we're reconvening for episodes 13 through, I think, episode 2 of season 2, making our way through that routine expedition. But today, it's going to be a Garden of Hope episode. Garden of Doom has been preceded, replaced, bumped by Garden of Hope this week because Sharon is going to teach her about environmental sustainability in the form of something she's been studying and is very passionate about, and that's called permaculture or ecology. And I have to be honest with you, I never heard these terms together until I connected with her and she told me what it was, and it was really just because she had some pictures on her Facebook that looked like it was a vacation. I was like, nice vacation. She's like, it's not a vacation, I'm studying. I'm like, okay. So now I know what it is. So now you're all going to learn what it is. But like I said, it's Garden of Hope. So today is a show of hope. If you're only here for the doom, it's time to tune out, but you shouldn't because that would make you a big jerk. So Sharon, welcome back in and tell the folks about yourself if they've forgotten. And then you can tell us, what is permaculture?
Hi.
Hi.
So, okay, so first I want to say I'm a student of permaculture. So it's not like I've been doing this for many years. I'm learning myself about what permaculture is. But how I got into it is, well, first I was an earth science teacher for 10 years, which actually came in handy my first couple of classes of permaculture because a lot of it had to do with what I learned in earth science. Mm-hmm. And then when I had kids, I stopped teaching, and when they started going back to school, I started volunteering on a farm. And I got involved in a CSA, and I just fell in love with that. And how actually I even came to the farm is because I was very interested in health and nutrition. I actually started to get interested in health and nutrition because I was diagnosed with depression. actually. And my experience at the doctor was, you have depression, here's a prescription for drugs. And there's a reason why I'm telling you this, because, you know, everything is all interrelated and connection. Our health, what we eat, how we feel, what we think is all connected. And I was so angry at this doctor for just writing me a prescription and not speaking to me about any other options besides that. So I did not do that. I threw it out, and I started doing research on health and nutrition, on depression, and a lot of it led to what I'm eating. It kind of like, that was like a starting point. So I started making changes in my diet. And then when I had kids, I really got into more health and nutrition because I wanted to bring them up to be healthy as well. So then that's where the farm kind of came into play. So I just remember one day I went to the farm. My son just didn't want to eat vegetables. He'd be like, "Nah, I don't like, you know, I was pushing it away." I'm like, "Don't try to hide it."
No kids like vegetables.
Food. And one day I brought him to the farm, and he was running around picking beans and snap peas and picking it off of the bushes and eating it like a kid in a candy store. And I was like, oh my God, this is such an amazing experience to watch a kid who doesn't like vegetables and is having this experience on a farm, this connection with the food, seeing where it grew, where it came from, picking it off the vine, the bushes, and then eating it and loving it because it was so sweet and tasty and crunchy. And I was like, every child has to have this experience. So then I wound up building a garden at their school. I created a nutrition program called Eating the Rainbow. I built a garden based around that as well, making this connection again.
Was it because the food tasted so fresh, or was it because it was like fun, like a game? You could pick it and...
honestly, it probably was both, you know? And that's one of the beauties of growing your food, because it's fun. You know, it's like you're taking care of something, you're watching it grow, and then you're eating it, you know, and it's really, you know, again, I feel like I'm going to use the word connection a lot, but I just feel like in our society, there's such a disconnect between us and nature, us and what we eat, and our actions, and what are the, you know, what are the, I can't think of the word.
Consequences?
Yes, thank you. The consequences of our actions.
No problem.
And so, you know, so that was kind of like my beginning of that. Of
the journey. So it was first with, it's funny, our story said the exact opposite. I would take because I couldn't sleep for many years. And, you know, they give you probably the same test they give everyone to see if you're depressed or whatever. And I kept failing it, meaning that I wasn't. And so after the third year, I'm like, listen, I need something to sleep. So I just answered the opposite of what I did the prior 3 years. I'm like, okay, write a prescription. So all I wanted were the drugs, and all you wanted was not the drugs. So
right, exactly.
I am the problem, you are the solution. Yes. Yes, so this is why Sharon's on the show, and this is why I was the doom. When this show started, you know, the whole thing was that my former co-host Shaheen was like mega garden. He was in a gardening frenzy, and so that's where the garden came from. And I was the doom then, and I'm the doom now. So it was Garden of Doom. People think that it was like it was meant to be bleak or whatever, an acronym for God. Nope, that was it. He was just in a mega gardening thing, and the first thing when he's like, what should we call the show? And I'm like, all you ever talk about now is gardening. I'm like, he's like, yeah, garden. I'm like, Garden of Doom. And he's like, yeah, that's it right there. So that's around, that's close enough to a true story. And the only reason it might not be is because I don't remember exactly, but it was pretty much, that was it. So.
Okay. Oh, I actually wondered why you called it, because I was like, the Garden of Doom, it sounds so sad. But now it's like a combination of the two of you.
Right. He was the garden, I was the doom. And sometimes he was the doom and sometimes we would switch places depending on the topic. But yeah, now it's just me. So I feel like I have to explain that all the time. But, you know, when I have when I have different guests, sometimes they're the garden and I'm the doom, or vice versa. Right,
well, actually, I have a question to ask you. Do you still consider yourself doomed?
I've never really considered myself doomed, but enough other people do that I don't dismiss that. I just think that, you know, okay. I think that I'm a realist with a tendency towards cynicism. And I am a natural pessimist. I mean, whether I say it or not, my first instinct to a lot of things is no versus yes, but that's not necessarily what comes out of my mouth, which took some time to do. No, I don't think so. I just think that, that's the fun stuff, doomsday. And, I mean, listen, it's like a movie, there's no movie, there's no drama without there being a great consequence or a great crime.
Black and white, without good and evil. Got it.
Exactly. So it's as simple as that.
Gardens and doom.
Yeah, we're not all that deep, or I'm not all that deep, at least with regards to the title, but you are, and I interrupted, which is sort of what I do.
That's okay. So actually, listening to what you're saying is I'm actually the complete opposite of you. Mm-hmm. I look at everything as sunshine and flowers and unicorns, and I'm like the total opposite of you, which is totally fine because you need a little bit of both.
Well, everybody knows everyone knows my producer and my girlfriend, La Sicaria. She's the same way. She's very connected with nature. She's very into healthy eating. She's very into holistic. She grows things. She talks to the plants. They almost die when she's not here. When she's here, it's like they perk up and respond. She walks around and animals come up to her. And now we have like birds' nests nearby and baby birds growing here. And so,
I like her a lot.
Yes, everyone likes her. I've been the problem, with in most situations. So but that's okay too. That's my lane. So anyway, back to the permaculture and the story of Sharon and permaculture.
Okay, so anyway, I'm just going to kind of like briefly talk about one of the definitions of permaculture. So the word permaculture itself stands for permanent culture and permanent agriculture, because they're permanent solutions to it. Yes, it's agriculture, but it's something bigger than that. It's a philosophy. It's a way of life. I can share with you kind of my interpretations of it, because like I said, I'm a student. I haven't been doing this long enough, so I'm learning also. And I feel like the more I learn about it, then kind of like the definition evolves along with it, because it's not just about agriculture. So it says over here, permaculture uses a set of principles and practices to design sustainable human settlements. So it does definitely go beyond just agriculture. It has to do with the water and how you are collecting the rainwater and how you're preparing the earth so that it holds and retains the water. It has to do with soil regeneration. What are you planting that's rejuvenating the soil and making it healthy so that you can continue to plant in it. What are you building? So it also has to do with the homes that you build. So every week I'm learning so many different things. And I kind of feel like I was talking to one of my friends today, and I was trying to explain it to her. And I was like, nature already has a natural balance. It already has an order of doing things. It has natural cycles. It has, natural systems that are built in, like when something dies, it breaks down and goes back into the earth. All of the nutrients go back into the soil, and then there's all the soil there so that when a seed drops from however it drops, when it gets there, then now that gives up the nutrients with the water and the air and the sun to grow. And it's just this whole cycle of life, and nature has already built that in. And then I kind of feel like humans came along and decided to rearrange things, and we decided to do it our way. Like, that's nice, but I want to do it this way. And I feel like us coming along and trying to control nature or change nature, or not liking the way nature does it and we want to do it our way, I feel like that's what's kind of like, messing it up, because Earth and nature is always going to want to reach a balance. And the more extreme we are to Earth, and the more we rip and take away, all of these natural systems, the stronger it's going to kind of fight back to, to try and maintain a balance on Earth.
Right, and the more of us there are, the harder it gets for nature to sort of equalize. I don't want to say battle back because it's almost like a conscious effort. It's and I know that there are cultures and people who feel that it is, but yeah, I don't want to get there right now. But I've always felt, even as a child, I remember looking at cemeteries and thinking, what a waste. Now, I wasn't being like natural about it. I was probably just thinking like it's a waste of real estate. You know, we were raised sort of in the same place, so you sort of think about those things probably before you're aware of environmental things.
I feel the same way about cemeteries.
Yeah, I mean,
I want to be a tree when I die. I do not want to be put in a box in the ground because it's just not it's just not the natural way of.
And most cemeteries are religious ceremonies. Even military cemeteries have religious signs on them. And most religious sort of do the ashes to ashes, dust to dust thing. But instead of recognizing that, we put ourselves in boxes full of enclosed that are lined, and the wood is protected to prevent it from any sort of natural wood erosion, let alone any erosion, instead of just let the body go in and let the dust go to dust and start the cycle anew. It's like we were trying to fight the cycle almost from the beginning when we first started burying. And I think there's evidence of burials, actual colony type burials or settlement type burials, like going back 80,000 years, something like that. I've posted articles about that on Garden of Doom. So just
that's
one
example of things that we have interrupted the natural cycle of life.
Yeah, I just like to remind the listeners I'm still here every now and then. So sorry.
No, that's okay. I actually totally forgot what I was talking about.
You had just done your definition of permaculture, and we're explaining how it's not just agriculture, it's not just culture, it's sort of you use the agriculture to sustain permanent systems but also part of it is changing our culture.
Right. So anyway, I got into this because I actually watched Down to Earth with Zac Efron on Netflix, and episode 3 was Costa Rica, and Stephen Brooks was there. It was Zac Efron and Darren Olin were the hosts of the show, and when they went to Costa Rica, this man named Stephen Brooks was their tour guide around Costa Rica. And what Stephen Brooks did was he created these eco-villages, these villages where people they buy a plot of land and they build sustainable homes, and everything that they do is geared towards sustainable living. And he also built this beautiful farm that's also like 100% sustainable. Like there's no garbage. Like when I went there was no napkins, and then that's what you saw me because I wound up going to Costa Rica. So when I was watching this episode, I just was so moved. I was like, wow, like this really is. It just felt so right with me that I need to be. I'm like, I want to be there, and that's exactly what I want to be doing with those people. So, so I signed up for another class, not the permaculture class. It was another class that they had, and the graduation was in Costa Rica. And when we went to Costa Rica, we stayed at a place for a few days. I think it was 3 nights, 4 days, 3 nights, and we stayed in a place called Punta Mona, and that was the farm, and everything is, whatever they need is from there. There are a few times where they have to go into town and where they do have to get outsource, items, but on the whole, it's like this whole self-sustaining farm. Like everything's edible. You walk around, there's all these, trees and plants, and everything is just edible. And it was just this amazing, beautiful experience. The toilets were composting toilets.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely an experience. Like there was nothing luxurious about this trip at all. It was all, about learning about just new ways of looking at living, and that's just kind of really what this is. It's almost like going back in time. To all the kind of like native, more indigenous ways of using the earth and moving more with nature. So I went there, and then when I came home, it was there that I was learning all these permaculture techniques. I was afraid to take the class because I'm like, I'm not gonna know. What if I don't know stuff and whatever? And there were classes that I take, and I'm just like, I don't just understand what they're saying. And then there were other classes where, like, some of my favorite classes were patterns in nature, which was amazing, soil building. We just learned about, like, alternative house building resources, like building a house from cob, or I forgot other materials, what they were called. But, like, I take class and it's I get really excited.
One of the nice things about adult education, I understand pride and you don't take a class and pay for a class and want to not do well in it, but it's not like you need to get an A, or, you're going there to learn new things, so that you shouldn't be afraid of learning new stuff. I mean, you've already gotten your college degree and have your career and stuff like that, so a little bit of the pressure's off. You're just there for the joy of learning something new.
Yeah, 100%. And then, so what happens is that I actually got rid of my landscaper this year, and I'm like, I'm freaking out. I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to take care of my property? And then I was like, you know what? It's not a big deal. So if my house looks a little shabby with others on the block, that's the worst that's going to happen. But that's not the case at all. And I'm actually using my property as my classroom, so that when I learn things, I try to take it into the classroom. I also started doing a lot of research and getting in contact with people on Long Island who already have information. So it's not just permaculture, like I'm learning about native plants. I have so many invasive species, the benefits of having native plants on your property, how much better that is for the environment. They attract native bees and butterflies and insects and birds and stuff. It's better for the soil because for the soil building, and things like that. So whatever. It's almost too much. It's very overwhelming, but it's okay. Whatever. I'm learning, a lot of stuff.
Well, it's entire world ecosystem, so it is. I mean, it's our universe. That is universal. So that is a lot for anybody to learn and try to encapsulate themselves. But I remember that you recommended a movie. It's on Netflix now, or it was anyway, called Kiss the Ground. Woody Harrelson is the narrator, and he plays a role in it too. And it was really eye-opening. And I did not realize how bad our traditional farming systems are. And I don't mean like the United States. I mean everywhere, going back to when we stopped being hunters and gatherers. And it's funny, I mean, nobody in the audience would know this except that I'm going to say so, is that this is the third episode of Garden of Doom I've recorded this weekend. And the one I did earlier was the host of the History of Africa podcast. And he was saying that the nomadic tribes in Africa, or peoples, actually were the wealthier peoples because they were healthier and they were stronger and they were the merchants. And he's like, it stands to reason, doesn't it? And of course I said yes, or agree with him. And in my head I thought, I always thought the nomads were sort of like, vagabonds or whatever. I thought the people who had the land were the wealthy. He's like, no, the farmers, they were struggling on the land but that's what we think of the hub of civilization, what made us something. And now that's sort of the reverse is sort of trending now. It's to sort of eat paleo, eat like we were the hunter-gatherers and less so. But bottom line is that we were, ever since we started tilling the land, we've been eroding and destroying the soil and not really, basically making our topsoil dead, as opposed to revitalizing it. So this whole movie was really about how you can avoid doing that and how it only takes a few years to transition. And the farmers, it's a win-win-win, because the farmers actually make more money because they're growing multiple crops, so that they're every acre, every spot, every foot on their farm is used for some sort of income generating purpose, something that can be brought to market. It helps the soil, it helps the environment. You can feed more people, you make more money, and also the government doesn't, a lot of the reason why we farm the way we do in this country, and I imagine we copied this from other countries, or other countries copied it from us, but apparently they pay farmers just to, before they grow a single crop, they're guaranteed a price for crops. And so they're really only incentivized to grow soybeans or corn or whatever it is. And most of that goes towards animal feed. So it's sort of the cycle of not so greatness, because animals do better when they eat grass or whatever. And that's why grass-fed beef is better. And it's healthier for us, and it's happier for the animals, and it's better for the land. I mean, it's all, like you were saying, a balance. And I'm like stealing your thunder, but anyway, people should see the movie because it really was eye-opening, and it seems like the government could take a role in this, and yes, we'd have to bite some economic bullet for probably 5 or 6 years in the transition to to allow those farmers to still live the way they're living now economically, but transitioning into a better life for really everyone now.
One of the other important point, one of the main important points of the movie was that when we have healthy soils that are filled with microbes in them, then it pulls the carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, and then it reverses all of the climate change and the damage and all of the pollution of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. I mean, that was one of the main ideas, that they were kind of making the point that there are solutions to climate change, and I think that's one of the most exciting. That's one of the biggest reasons that I'm so excited about taking this class, about being part of this. I'm in a class with almost 200 people. And then the last class that they had, and they're from all over the world, and then the last class that they had was also almost 200 people. So to me, how I look at it is that, okay, so we almost 400 people from all around the world that are taking these classes. They're going to go back to they're going to be, using all of this knowledge in their own home and teaching everybody around them. And it's, I guess it's like more of a, grassroots way of doing it. And it's like,
pun intended,
and educating people that way. And I feel like when I watch things, because whenever you hear things like, oh, climate change, the world is coming to an end, it's very overwhelming, and it's very paralyzing to a lot of people, because it's like, okay, all you're doing is freaking out and telling everybody what all the problems are. And what's so amazing about permaculture is that these are the solutions. There are solutions. So why I'm excited is that I'm now part of the solution to what's going on, and I'm just doing it. I'm not asking permission. I'm not looking for my local government to give me permission or money or anything to do anything. I'm doing it. And can I tell you, in the last 2 days, I have 3 friends. I'm helping one build a garden. One of my friends is doing her backyard. She wants me to help her to design and to help her plant her backyard. And the other one wanted to redo her front yard. And then I actually got a job because I had a landscape designer came to my house because I felt overwhelmed. And he's doing, I'm not sure what I want to do with this, but he's in the business, of doing it. So I said to him, I said, this is kind of a weird question. And he knows I'm taking a permaculture class. He knows that I'm doing all of this stuff and everything. I go, can I follow you around? I go, can I come to work with you? And this guy, I never met him before. Came to my house, found me, whatever. And I was just like, can I follow you around? Can I help, can I come to work with you? And then you can, just so I can see what you do so that I can get educated, whatever. He goes, you know what, I'll do better. Why don't you come work for me? And I'm like, okay. So I got a job. And so it's like, and I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I just said yes. And so I just feel like, so that's how I look at the world. It's so easy to look at the world and think that the world is coming to an end. And in some ways, it is. The things that are going on are horrifying. It's devastating. But there's also solutions. And I am now surrounding myself with people who are all part of the solution. And we're going out, and little by little we're going out, and then there's going to be another class. And I'm not the only person. I know I volunteered at a farm also, and on the farm, they had a hard time getting seeds this year. What they were telling us in the class is that the interest in growing your own food and having a more sustainable living since COVID has gone up 4,000%. I mean, that's like an insane amount, right? Sure. So I know I'm not the only one. And, and that's what I choose to focus my attention on. What's the solution? Not sitting around, wallowing in and getting paralyzed by just listening to what all the problems are.
So when people go to these restaurants and supermarkets and they see sustainable and grass-fed, I mean, assuming it's true, because you have to be careful, you have to do your research, because a lot of these claims are not necessarily checked, and sometimes they have to be, I'm not sure what the regulation is on just saying something's organic or not, or how well it's policed. But in any event, just assuming that it's correct for the moment, those things actually mean something. It's not just a trendy way to have new expensive restaurants that look rustic. This farm to table and sustainable movements. It is about helping the environment. And yes, you're still killing a cow to eat that steak, but the way the cow lived is different. The way the cow responds to the environment is different. The way the environment responds to the cow is different.
Right.
The way the soil,
Walking around, grazing, eating the grass, or is it stuffed in, a place with thousands of other cows and they're excrementing on each other, and it's
sure.
What is the lifestyle of the cow,
But I have to be honest with you that I think that most people in the world, yes, if you ask them, they say, yeah, I wish animals lived better. But I think you can close your eyes and not really care. The real point is that, if you do care about that, great, full stop, then you're on board. But if you don't really care how a cow lives, it's less about the cow than it is about everything the cow touches, including the ground, the soil, the way the excrement grows more grass, the way that they move from field to field.
Another thing, actually, it's funny that you're talking about cows, because we actually just learned about cows and cow grazings, and it's like how cows are kind of getting a bad rap, because it's true. They're cutting down so many forests so that the cows can graze. I just learned of the most horrific thing that's going on in Montana, how they're destroying species of animals so that they can cut down their land so that cows can graze so that we can eat hamburgers. And really what they're learning is that if cows and herd animals graze the land the way that they used to, before the Europeans came along and decided to kill, all the buffalo and everything, just the way herd animals are supposed to naturally graze the land, then that's healthier for the environment too, because it creates a more natural. It's better for the ground and for the soil for them too, because their dung is manure, and then they're mowing the lawn. So you kind of travel them around. And that's kind of what I was saying in the beginning, that permaculture goes along with what is, nature already set everything up. The earth was perfectly fine before we came along and decided to have our own opinions on how we're supposed to be doing things. So herd animals are supposed to be herds. They're supposed to graze the land. What we do and how we put the cows together and how they don't graze the land and we feed them soy and all this crap, that's not natural, and that's unhealthy, and so that's a negative way of dealing with cows. So I just kind of feel like cows are the reasons why there's global warming or whatever, or climate change, and it's not. It's the way that we're taking care of them, and it's the way that we're raising them.
Yeah, and if the folks out there are like me and you're not going to stop eating beef, I'm not going to stop eating beef. You could at least maybe, try to look for the organic meat, the free-range meat, the sustainable farms, the sustainable ranches.
Personally, I don't want to have a comment about that. I don't want to talk and say anything that I don't really know what I'm talking about.
I do that all the time. That's
I don't feel comfortable doing it. I mean, personally, I do get my meat, when it does say that it's, grass-fed and free range and stuff like that. But, but whatever. I don't feel comfortable with.
Well, you just did.
Direction of the.
You just said you did, but you're saying you don't have to listen. She's not telling you to. I'm not telling you to do it either. I'm just suggesting it. I'm just suggesting it for myself.
Before I eat it, and I think.
Yes, well, think. That's good. We try to be mindful, I suppose. Listen, I'm not going to say I'm perfect. I certainly am not. But I'm not going to change the foods I eat, but I can change, the source of the food sources of them, and that's shouldn't be too hard. Anyway, so back to permaculture.
I have a question to ask you, and you edit things out, right?
We can, sure, yes.
I didn't know how long you wanted to talk for, because then I didn't know if you wanted to move into the world. I didn't know how long you want to talk about permaculture.
Oh, until you run out of stuff to say about permaculture. But, I mean, the shows are typically, 75 minutes to 90 minutes is perfect. If it's less than that, that's, 60 minutes is probably the shortest show I've ever done. The longest, I think, was our second Land of the Lost show, where we went, over 2.5 hours. That was too long.
I'm okay with less, because I feel like quality is better than quantity. I just don't want to start talking about stuff that I don't know what I'm talking about.
That's fine. Don't worry about that. I'm keeping track of the time, and
okay.
So right here, Viv, is where we will stop the edit. You'll start the edit at where she asked the question. So I guess now here is where we stop the edit. Okay, so Sharon is not taking a position on how we should eat. I have done so irresponsibly, perhaps. You can make your own judgment. You like Fox is supposed to be, we report, you decide. So what else in permaculture would you like to tell us, convey to us? Any, are there any other movies other than we talked about Kiss the Ground? What was the name of the one that you saw that took place in Costa Rica? Zac Efron was in it. Troy Bolton.
Oh, no, that was a Netflix TV show. That was it had 8 episodes. They went around to 8 different countries to see how it was called Down to Earth with Zac Efron. They're actually making a second one. They went around to 8 different countries to see how what are other countries doing and handling sustainability in their country. So like Iceland is 100% renewable. They talked about water, I want to say, in France. They just went to all the different countries. And then in Costa Rica, they were talking about, his eco-villages, and they also went to a jaguar rescue center. So that was that. Once I started learning about soil, and the health of soil and the microbes in it, and how it, pulls carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, I kind of became a little obsessed with it. So I did watch a lot of movies. I watched another movie called The Biggest Little Farm, and that really shows trial and error in a whole process. It took 7 years for this farm to kind of get itself all. But once you start using permaculture principles, what happens is that eventually it reaches a point where nature just takes over, and it's less farmer, less human interaction, and more nature kind of, coming over. So they had a slug problem, but they had ducks too. So the ducks came in and ate the slug, not slugs, the snails. And then they had a mole problem, but they had owls also. So the owls came and ate the moles. It was just, it created this cycle, where one of the principles in permaculture is the problem is the solution. So when I was looking at my property, I was frustrated because I'm like, I have clay soil. The sun goes across my house, and my house cuts the sun, so I don't have direct sunlight anywhere. I have too many trees. I thought that these were all problems. But really they're not. It's just kind of what does grow in clay soil? So what can I do, as opposed to, looking at, that what I have is a problem. And meanwhile, me having all of these trees is a solution. It helps, the ground from eroding, it does create shade, which helps other, plants to grow. So it's there's something called stacking, so having all of these different level plants and trees, is actually beneficial, so it's, I'm learning things I'm starting to look at things as what can I do, as opposed to get frustrating and stuck and, being this is a problem, that's a problem. Well, I don't know how to do it.
Let me ask you this. You said 7 years, which is interesting, because the other farmer in Kiss the Ground, it was the same thing, 7 years. That's the amount of years for the full transition. It wasn't the same farmer, was it?
No, this was a couple.
Okay, so
this was a couple.
So 7 years seems to be the magic transition number. And
I don't know.
Well, 2 for 2. I mean,
okay, yeah, that sounds good. Yes,
or thereabouts. But the where I'm trying to go with this, and again, listen, the United States changing. Even if we did that 100%, a lot more countries need to get on board too. But when I said bite the bullet economically, I think all of the subsidies was something like 25 billion or 50 billion a year to the farmers, which sounds like a lot, but given the climate that we've been in with the COVID relief bills and the infrastructure bill that's been talked about and some of the tax cut bills, I mean, you're talking in trillions. So 50 billion over 7 years to transition where you could cut that out entirely and put that towards other things. And presumably there'd be some phase out. It wouldn't always be 50 billion a year. At some point things would turn, but whatever, even if it's 50 billion a year.
Things that I don't know much about this, but to me also what I'm thinking while you're talking is education. I think a lot of farmers just don't know these practices, and I think a lot of farmers, because if you think about it, if you're a farmer, then you go into farming because you care about the land. You either have some kind of family history there, and there is some connection between you and the land. And I think a lot of farmers would want to learn about these practices, just because if it makes sense, if it, if it's like you were saying.
There's a lot of corporate farms these days as well.
Win-win for everybody. And so there are people who go around the country and they educate farmers on these new practices. And it's a lot. You've been doing one thing your whole life, and then all of a sudden you have to change all your equipment. You have to change, it's a big process. So it should just be like, oh yeah, let's just do this, and it's only a 7-year bite the bullet. It's more of a process that I'm thinking in my head would need phases, of making these changes. But I don't know. I'm just, like I said, I'm just trying to learn and make a difference locally. I love the term think globally, act locally. And that's what, what can I do around here to help make, my little world a better place for everybody. And then that domino effect.
Well, I'm just sure that I'm sure that you're right about farmers. I think even, corporate-owned farms which own a lot of the farms would feel the same way at their root. But I think all of them are afraid. We have guaranteed profit now. We have guaranteed income. If that's going to still be guaranteed and they can change, it's a win-win-win for everyone, including all of us, even down to those of you who care about how those pigs and chickens and cows live their day-to-day life. Everything wins, but the farmer, there's no risk. And if there's no risk involved to them, I guess they'd be worried at year 8, but if they're convinced by the education and they see that it's working long before year 8 comes along, they'll see the transition, and perhaps there'd be some supplementary plan for those farms where it didn't work out for them, that they needed a longer time or something else happened. I don't know, but it would still be far less than 50 billion. And it seems like it would be a net win, and it's sort of chump change based compared to some of the things we're spending. Listen, I'm not in Congress.
I actually don't feel comfortable talking about this at all, because I feel like you're throwing numbers around and throwing money around, and I'm just not in a position to be having this conversation at all.
No,
it sounds like you're just making stuff up, and
I'm not.
This is territory that I'm not comfortable talking about at all.
Well, it was in the movie. So if I'm making it up, it's because Woody Harrelson made it up, or the people who wrote it. But and it might be dated by a couple years or whatever the case is. But
and you're comparing apples and oranges. You're not, it's like it sounds like you're just trying to substitute one idea for another idea. And what if permaculture costs less? Like, it's like I can't be part of, I can't contribute to the conversation because I don't.
That's
I don't
okay.
know that. Like
You are here for the. You're here for
40 years would be able to talk about it, but
no, you're here for permaculture education. I'm here for wild speculation, trying to throw in my limited policy and congressional political knowledge. Yeah, no, we're not asking you for that. You don't have to endorse or not. It just a lot of this is thinking aloud. Some of it is thinking from about stuff I've mulled over since seeing the movie. But I think the movie was supposed to plant that seed in my head. I mean, they were pretty clear about numbers.
How I look at it is that it's only one movie and it's only one perspective.
That's true.
You know, so I kind of feel like you need to have watch, you know, like do just so much more research and have all of the angles. Like this is one aspect, and then if somebody, you know, like to me, I'm not making conclusions based on one movie. It's like I need so much more information for me to.
It's true, but the USDA had a guy that his job was to drive around to farms and try to educate them. At least there's one program on it. Anyway, again, there's the.
And I think he worked for the government.
He did USDA.
Did he work for the USDA.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure the farmer from North Dakota, the rancher from North Dakota, who also was a farmer now, but he still calls himself proudly a rancher. I'm sure that they paid him for his appearances as well, going around and doing lectures and whatever the case. But you're right. People shouldn't take it from me, who took it from one movie. You know, you're the one who recommended the movie to me, and you're reticent. That's probably prudent. But, you know, check out other sources as well. But, you know, again, spitballing, thinking out loud, it's a podcast. We're not going to save the world here, but, you know, maybe we can do a little bit of part. Again, this is a show of hope. So try and be more hopeful there. Sharon, you're the one that said that you were always optimistic. All right. So moving on to what else is there in permaculture that you can impart to us, or your experiences, what you learned that you can share? Are we at the end of the permaculture section? Because we were also going to go into art, because one of your other passions is art, and you are a docent at a art museum in New York, which is a hoi polloi fancy pants part of the world, obviously. Everyone's like, Jeff, you're from New York? I haven't lived in New York for, I don't know, 35 years, but yeah, I guess so. Anyway, so what is a docent?
So, a docent is the person in the museum who gives a tour. I'm a docent at the Nassau County Museum of Art. It's in Roslyn, and it was an old mansion. It was a brick mansion, and the North Shore of Long Island is considered the Gold Coast. There's a lot of mansions on Long Island that have turned into museums or, you know, preserves. And I got into being a docent. I was an art history major in college, and I always loved art. And I don't know, one day I was at the museum with my mom, and this woman was giving us a tour. She was amazing. And I said to my mom, I'm like, that looks really cool. Like, I wonder what I would have to do that. Because I wasn't working at the time, and I just was like, you know, I've always wanted to do it. So I had to give a presentation, which was really cool. The presentation was that I had to pick an object in my house, bring it, talk about it for 5 minutes. And the teacher that I am, I was like, first of all, it took me so long. I was like, so much pressure. What object am I picking in my house to talk about? So I picked a skull that I got. I was in Mexico, and I brought back these ceramic skulls that were decorated for the Day of the Dead.
Oh, you didn't kill anyone and skin them?
No one was killed in
that's disappointing.
The process of creating this skull.
Okay.
So it was decorated, and I learned all about Day of the Dead and all of the symbols and the pictures that were on, like how it was decorated and why it used those symbols of nature, the 4 seasons, and it was really cool. So I gave my presentation, and they liked me. So then I got into they had this really great training. It was amazing. So there were 7 of us, and I felt like I was back in school again. And so I love being a docent. I love that they have all of these different exhibits. I learned so much about art and artists, and I love presenting it to people. I feel like a lot of people come into the museum and they're a little intimidated by looking at art. One of the women, even who was a docent, she kept saying, I'm not an art history major, you know, I hope I'm going to be okay. And I'm like, I promise you, being an art history major has nothing to do with being a docent. Like, you do your research, you know, and then you present it, you know, and then you talk about it to the people. And I feel like, you know, because it's funny how you introduced me. What were you saying about, did you say hoity-toity? Is that the word that you used?
Probably something like that. Sounds like me.
Right. And for me and art, I'm not hoity-toity at all.
Okay.
And I feel that art is for everybody. It's for the people. And actually, that's what a lot of the graffiti art is that bringing art to the streets so that everybody can enjoy art. Not just people who are intellects or educated, or even, some museums are free so that anybody can go and enjoy art, or it's by donation, so that anybody could go, because art's for everybody. And that's how I feel like I give my tour, is that I teach people how to look at the art that they're looking at, and kind of like bring it down to earth, that, you don't have to have a master's degree or a PhD in art to be able to understand what you're looking at.
But when we spoke earlier in the week in what I like to call pre-production, which is what it is, I said, so are you going to tell us who the Impressionists are and this and that? And you're like, nope, I'm not. That's not the way I do things. So,
I didn't want to give an art history lesson.
That is fine. You establish what you're not doing.
Everybody wants that.
I don't know.
Let's ask the audience. Who wants an art history lesson?
Well, I don't see any hands raised, so there we go. So you told me what you're not going to do, but you were a little mysterious on what you are going to do. But so tell us how you would tell a group coming into the museum how to approach art, or not tell them how how would you introduce people to art and make them, I don't know, whatever you think, whatever your presentation would be to, whether it's a group of second graders or a group of folks that really indicate they didn't have an appreciation for art, but they wanted to develop one. How would you tell people to develop a relationship with art?
A group of second graders is a completely different tour than adults. So I actually, I like giving tours to adults. I mean, I give tours to the kids also, but because of COVID, we haven't had any.
Well, let's stick to the adults then, because kids aren't listening to this show. If they are parents, this is not a kids show normally.
Yeah, no, but I just want to say that the education department there is amazing. They do such a good job with making it really fun for the kids to go with the parents through the museum. Mm-hmm. So anyway, when I'm giving a tour to adults, it depends on what the exhibit is. It's kind of hard to talk about art, I think, if we're not kind of like really looking at it. But I could just give an example from some of the exhibits that I've done. So the last exhibit that they had was Women and Abstract Expressionist Art. And abstract expressionist art is, it's a lot of color. Usually there isn't a figure in it. I would say the most famous abstract expressionist art is Jackson Pollock. And a lot of people who are critics of the art will be like, I could do that. He just flung stuff on a canvas, which is true. He did fling, drip, he did, a lot of different techniques in making it. But looking at art in a picture or on a computer is such a completely different experience than standing in front of it. And how Jackson Pollock did it, I think what I'm learning myself about artists is that when I'm looking at a piece of art, I'm like getting into their minds. I'm getting into their soul. What are they trying to say? What are they trying to express in a painting? And it's not just paintings. There's there's sculptures. There's all different kinds of art that goes into an exhibit, not just a painting. So anyway, just back to Jackson Pollock. There are people who come in. They're like, I could do that. And really what I say to them is, I say, my first reaction is, but you didn't. But I don't say that to them. And, and usually I ask them, I say, are you an artist? Do you paint, or do you do any kind of crafts? Usually the people who say I can do that are not. They don't make anything, because if you make something, you're never going to say that, because you know what goes into thinking of something, creating it, trying to put what's in your head and out into something tangible is extremely difficult. And and Jackson Pollock did it first. But Jackson Pollock, there was a rhythm. And that actually, it ties in, believe it or not, to permaculture. Because in nature, there's a lot of patterns. There's all of these patterns in nature. And the human body and how we move and do things, we have a rhythm ourselves too. So that if you look at a Pollock, if you first look at it, it looks like chaos. It does. But if you take time and you sit with it, and you look at a picture, it's not chaotic. It's actually extremely rhythmic and it's extremely balanced. And when he moved across the canvas, there was a rhythm to his action. And that's because a lot of artists, when they're creating, they go into a trance. They go into like this, haven't you ever been so involved in something that you're doing that you lose track of time? You don't know what's going on. You're just so focused on whatever it is that you're doing.
Sure. I remember once playing Lego Star Wars with one of my kids, and we started at like 7 in the morning. And I looked up at the clock and it was 6 at night, but that's probably not the example you were looking for.
Yeah, 100%. When you're in that creative zone, it's a meditation. You're just in another place, and then instinct takes over. Your brain isn't that's not true, because a lot of times artists are trying to figure things out, or they have challenges and how are they going to get through this, that, and the other thing, but they're still in that zone. And so to stand in front of a Jackson Pollock and go like, I can do that, you're not giving yourself enough credit to just stand there with the picture and just hang out with it for a while and just kind of open your mind. And that's kind of what I try to do when I'm giving a tour, is just open people's minds. Because when I walk around with people, they'll be like, oh, I don't like that. And I'll be like, that's okay. You don't have to like everything that you look at, but at least give it a chance to have some kind of conversation with you. I don't like everything that is in the exhibit, but I can talk about it with the people.
Sure.
And we could just talk about it. There's so many different ways of looking at a picture. You can look at how was the paint put on it. So the abstract expressionists were very gestural. A lot of their paints were very thick, and a lot of movement in the pictures. But then there are other painters who, it soaks into the canvas. So you get very different, when you're looking at one piece, it's a lot of very action-oriented. The other piece is very soothing. So sometimes I'll compare things. I'll just be like, how do you feel when you look at this piece compared to how do you feel when you look at that piece? And you know what? You could do that yourself. If you go to a museum, you could just be like, I'm going to compare these two pictures. I've never seen either one of them before, but how do I feel differently if I'm looking at these two pieces? It doesn't always have to be the history of the artist and what was going on. There are times where that definitely comes into play. And then sometimes it doesn't necessarily matter. Depends on what it is that you're looking at.
Are these patterns that you're talking about? Are we talking about like the nebulas, the snowflakes, the sort of the conch shell?
Yeah. So one of the most famous patterns in nature. There's all different kinds of patterns. So let's say, like, we could talk about one is the dendritic pattern. Like if you look at a tree, there's a trunk and the branches go off in all different directions.
Sure.
If you look at streams from satellites and outer space, they have that same pattern. If you look at what's it called? Your veins, in your body, that also, has that same pattern. So on leaves, sometimes they have that pattern. So one of them is called the Fibonacci sequence. So you put up the shell, You know, so that also is a series of numbers. It's like, I think it's like 0 plus 1 is 1. 1 plus 1 is, I don't know if it's 1 plus 1 is 2. 1 plus 2 is 3. 3 plus 5 is 8.
You take the two preceding numbers and you double. Yeah.
Exactly. And then that's you're going to find that in sunflowers, in shells, and, you know, in so many, you know, different things, you know, you're going to see that ratio and that pattern in a lot of different things in nature.
Yes, and people have found ways to tie this into everything. It's sometimes called sacred geometry, and yep. So and we're not going to do that today, but you know, it's not based on nothing. It is based on natural patterns. So yeah, sorry to interrupt.
No, that's actually totally fine, because I'm so fascinated with that, and I really wish that math in school was taught in a more conceptual way and more interesting, because math is like the language of the universe, and it is tied to art, because what do artists try to replicate in a lot of their art is nature and patterns and things in nature. Like I'll be like, God was the first artist, you know, because what is it that we're trying to, when we look at color, where are we getting ideas for what colors we want to paint on the canvas? From nature. Where do we get paint from? Earth, and all of the earthly colors. It comes from there, you know. So, and which goes way back to permaculture, how everything is connected. Everything's connected. Somehow you can always tie anything together because we're all connected with each other.
I mean, that could almost be a stopping point, except it's too short, and you've cleverly avoided giving us any of your art presentation past the guy who said, I can do my own Jackson Pollock, which, by the way, when we were kids, my parents did that with us, and we did create our own Jackson Pollock, and I scoffed at it myself for years, but I always hope they don't listen to my show anyway, because, you know, well, because it doesn't matter. But they don't generally listen to it because it's a little out there for them. But it actually was a nice work. It was a nice painting, and it's in my brother and sister-in-law's home now, and I'm sure they're enjoying it instead of me. But like most things, it's my own damn fault. What's that?
I said I could talk about the exhibit that's there now.
Sure. I mean, well, you said you had Andy Warhol. There was Toulouse-Lautrec. These are household names, or they should be anyway.
Exactly. So when I first learned about the exhibit that's there now, I was like, and I can't tell you how many times. So when we first are introduced to an exhibit, we get pictures and, you know, the name of the artist and the information about the piece. And I'm always like, you know, because again, looking at art as a picture on a computer, and then whenever I go to the exhibit opening, and I see it hung in the galleries, I'm always like, wow, it looks so amazing. It looks so different than on the little screen. So I really can't emphasize the difference between, you know, just being in front of a piece of art. So the exhibit that's now is two exhibits. On the first floor, it's La Belle Époque, and which is like the beautiful time. You know, it was in Paris, and you know, I was like, I don't know that I'm really that interested in that period of time. It just seemed so drab. And then upstairs was Andy Warhol, you know, and he's fun, you know, and I just was like, God, this is such a bizarre combination of, like, you actually can't have two more polar opposite eras in history, you know, and art. But it winds up being that there is so many more connections to the two, because we just did a walkthrough, and you know, once we start doing the research and talking about it, I was watching a documentary about Toulouse-Lautrec, and twice they talked about Andy Warhol, I'll talk a little bit about Toulouse-Lautrec because he actually is very interesting. He really is like, and I'm not sure if I'm naming him this, but I'm just going to say, I'm going to go out there, you know, and say that he's like the father of advertising. And I don't know that people really recognize that about who he is. I think most people, his reputation is that he was the short, distorted artist because he had bone problems and he was an alcoholic. And I think that, people just think of all of these weird things about him, but not recognize that he really was a genius in how he put things down on paper. So he did advertising. That's how he's famous for his posters that he did. And that was advertising at the time. So this was turn of the century, 1800s going into 1900s, all the way up to World War I, which was 1914. So this is the period of time that I'm talking about. So there's no TV, no computers, I think photography was just starting. There really wasn't a lot of ways of communicating and advertising things. It was also a period of time where it was like the second industrial revolution, so people were having like more casual time where they could enjoy entertainment, like theater, opera, the can-can, where you can have, go out and be entertained. So they needed to advertise it, and they asked him to advertise the Moulin Rouge, and he came up with a way of, he was very influenced by Japanese print, which was very simple. Usually had like one subject, the background was very non-existent, and very simple colors. And the way that he did the composition of the prints, everything that he did, like let's say it was Moulin Rouge. Let's say that's the title of what he's advertising. The heads of the people would cut off, would be in front of part of the word Moulin Rouge. And they still do that in advertising today. Like, he invented that. Like, isn't that weird to think of, like, something that we see all the time, and now we're finding out, like, where it came from. He used very bright, vivid, only, like, let's say 3 colors on the whole thing. Because you're walking down the street, and you want to catch people's eyes. So you have, like, very simple subject, kind of off-center, or diagonal, very bright colors, really huge letters, and bam, that's, like that. And they were very realistic. He didn't beautify the people, which is also like another thing that people used to do. So he was in with stars. He was creating stars, and stars were creating him. Like, does that make sense? Like, they both made each other famous.
Sure, it was synergistic.
So we're going to fast forward to Andy Warhol, which is a very similar scenario. Hobnobbing with the famous people, he made famous people, more famous or whatever, and they made him famous. It was kind of like this, and he was also wowed by, and his style of I think he did silk screens, and Toulouse-Lautrec did lithographs, which are 2 different types of printmaking. But the way Andy Warhol did his silk screenings was different than what other people did. He was the first one, I think, to put things off register. So it's like, if you have someone's face and then you want to outline it with something, the outline isn't going to really be on the outline of the face. It's going to be off, like it was pushed over a little bit. So, and the colors that he used, very bright, vivid, eye-catching. So they really had a lot in common.
So Andy Warhol was 60s and early 70s?
I mean, well, he was until he died. I mean, he was even 80s. Yeah, he was, I don't remember when he died.
That's all right. It was just, so they were basically 70 years apart, sort of their peaks, I guess, is what we would say. How you drew the parallel that they both use vivid colors, bright lines, that they both sort of did something first, which also ties into what you said about Jackson Pollock. While somebody said, I could do that. Well, you said, yeah, you did. Somebody did it first. There's lots of stupid things like, that come up where somebody goes, I could have done that. No, but you didn't. Somebody else came up with it first. I mean, yeah.
It's not only that, I feel like I could have done that is also extremely dismissive to the whole process of creating art, is that there is an intellectualism behind the creation. There is, a whole process of creating it. So let's say if we go back to the Pollock or even with Andy Warhol, it's a process to do printmaking. It's a process to make watching Jackson Pollock actually create his paintings is just as exciting as his paintings in and of itself. So to look at a piece of art and say, I can do that is, I feel is just, I don't think that people who are creative and who do practice art would say something like that. Because I've taken art classes and I've sat in front of a blank canvas. I have to tell you, that's one of the scariest things, is to just sit there and be like, okay, what am I making? What am I putting on this? How am I getting it there?
Yeah, no, it's not just that somebody did it first, it's that they thought to do it first. I mean, the thought is part of the inspiration.
Exactly. And that's the creation of an idea. So yeah, you can create a Jackson Pollock now.
Yeah.
But he was the one who did it first. He had that idea because of going, what happens when I do this? Because a lot of times artists are playing. They're going, what happens when I do this? What happens when I do that? And a lot of times, if you in a room with children who are in elementary school, they're young, and you go, hey, just draw this. They don't even think twice about it. They sit themselves down, they grab their crayons, and they just make it. If you go to an adult and you say, hey, make this, the adult has all this judgment in their head. They have all of these, things that are holding them back. And I don't know, like they have to make it perfect, and a kid doesn't care. And an artist is going to come in, has this childlike, they haven't lost that childlike curiosity of what happens if I mix these two colors together? It's, what happens if I add turpentine to this and I do that? What happens if, it's like trial and error and making mistakes and, hey, I have this idea, how am I going to get it? And making 1,000 mistakes before they actually figure out how to do what it is that they want to do.
Yeah. And I know that when we spoke in pre-production, we talked about how do you learn to or come to appreciate art, and basically you're after a bit of a conversation, your conclusions were, one, some things are just going to hit you, but for other stuff you just have to sort of sit there and observe and take it in, and at some point either you're going to feel it or you're not. I mean, you have to take the opportunity to learn it, and you'll develop a relationship with art. And you don't, like you said earlier, you don't have to like everything. Not everything has to be your taste. You should appreciate it, but it doesn't mean that you like it. I don't love mushrooms, but I appreciate people who cook mushrooms well. Mushrooms
are a very important part of the permaculture, of the process of breaking down, and mushrooms are really important. So it's okay if you don't like them.
All comes together.
Really, fungi is very important.
Everything comes back to the permaculture. Yes, that was sort of a softball.
Everything's connected. But what I feel is that if people just come to art with an open mind, to just being open to what it is that they're looking at.
And as you pointed out, there are a lot of museums that are free. So, you don't have to invest a lot of money into it at all. But it's like going to the zoo and you see the rhinoceros at the zoo. It is a much more majestic, gigantic, impressive creature than if you look at a picture on Google, on Google Images or whatever the case is. It's just there's a big difference, and there's
I don't want to piss off the rhinoceros.
No, don't piss off the rhinoceros. Don't do that. But it's and any animal, they're just more interesting. Most things in nature are more impressive in person than on the movie screen or on TV or whatever it is. And as you said,
when you standing in front of.
And I think the reverse is the true with most man-made things. I mean, not always. And if you really think about how tough it was to build something, but you see, I don't know, the Empire State Building. It's very big, but you look and you're like, or the Eiffel Tower. It's
I disagree with you. Like,
okay, but
because that's also it's art. It's a creative process, and bridges they're very majestic. The Empire State Building, when you stand in front of it, you're not like, wow. I mean, the Art Deco, it's so beautiful.
Yeah, I'm afraid that I guess I'm on that. Listen, it's tall, but it's I mean, I don't know what to say. I feel like whatever I say is going to get me into more trouble here, and probably not just with you, but with like the entire the entire world. I think sort of, but things just seem smaller. Man-made things seem smaller in person than they do. Not that they're not beautiful, but like the Statue of Liberty looks smaller. The Eiffel Tower looks smaller than I wanted it to be. But when you look at art, or when you see like animals in nature, sure, but even in like the zoo or whatever, it's larger, more robust. Like seeing the circus on TV versus in person is an entirely different scenario. It's an entirely different experience. I think that's all I'm trying to convey, is that a lot of things that man doesn't really, when you build something, it doesn't really mimic nature, but art does its best to do so, and the great artists sort of get it. And I'm sure it's the same with the great architectures and the great builders as well. So I guess I'm contradicting myself, which is fine also. I mean, the Garden of Doom, like we talked about, duality. So, yeah, all right. She's shaking her head and being like, yeah, whatever, dude. That's all right. I get that a lot. Anything else that you want to tell us about art? Anything else that you want to recommend to beginners who want to take something in? Is there some sort of like a lazy man's approach to this?
Well, I always think that I always feel that when I love having beginners or people who don't really know art on the tours. I always feel like taking a tour or listening, to the earbuds when you're walking around an exhibit definitely expands it. And just like with anything else, when you first learn how to do something, it's just, over and over again. I mean, with art, there's such diversity. I kind of feel like there's something for everybody. Like there's almost like, there's so many different types of art and so many different types of museums. So just, but I always feel like if you do take a tour or you do listen to the thing, it enhances the experience so much more. And then you build on it, because now you learned that for that exhibit about things, and then now you know who this person is, or this period of time, and then you start to see things repeat itself, or you start to see that one artist is being influenced by another artist, and then you start to see that, and you start to make connections, and that's how you build a knowledge of things. You do not have to be an art history major. You don't have to have a PhD. You just need to have an open mind and
and eyes,
willingness to appreciate.
And you don't even really necessarily need eyes, because there's other kinds of art too. But this is, I guess, mostly visual is what we're talking about. All right, wonderful. Most of my guests have something to plug. I don't think you do. Is it too early to plug your new landscaping company?
I don't have a landscaping company. Mm-hmm. Oh my God, it's terrible. I don't even know the name of the landscaping company that I'm working at now, because that's not how I got the job. It's like I went on an interview. I just was like, hey, can I follow you? And that was kind of it. But, if anybody's on Long Island, come to the Nassau County Museum of Art. I mean, it's, because it's not just the exhibit. The property is in and of itself is beautiful. There's sculpture everywhere. They have paths. They have hiking trails. So I feel like it's so great. You can come with your family. You can just come with friends. Like, I always make a whole day of it. I invite my friends to come with me. I give them a tour of the museum. We walk around the grounds. It's, so I would say that that's the only thing that I would plug.
Well, I would say...
if anybody reaches out to you, if they're... I mean, do you know if you have listeners that are from Long Island? But I would give people a tour if they reach out to you.
If they do, I will. I know where some of the listeners are from, but it's usually the ones that... I usually remember people who are from like other countries or places that like I've never been to, so I probably wouldn't remember New York. But anyway, I think this episode in the hour and 20 minutes or however long it ends up being, we taught people how to start the process of saving the world and enriching their experience on the world. So hey, this was a Garden of Hope. I would say mission accomplished. We should probably get Nobel Prizes, me just for being here and coming up with the idea. But Nobel Prizes, each of us, because I don't want to split my prize money with anybody. And like I said, next time you hear from Sharon, she's going to be helping us talk about possibly the greatest piece of art and greatest balanced ecology in the known universes and dimensions, and that would be The Land of the Lost in a World Created by Sid and Marty Krofft. So come join us again, won't you? Sharon, thank you so much for your time and your expertise, but I know you're going to say, no, I'm just a student. So your continuing studies, and as you continue your journey and learning, obviously we'll be in touch, and who knows, maybe you'll have more insights to share with us in the future. I understand you've parlayed this into another podcast appearance, so you're quickly becoming a star of the podcast world as well.
Oh yeah, I am. On the 28th, I am doing another podcast. It's so funny because I'm taking a class, and in the chat I said that I'm helping my friend build a garden, and she was like, "Would you like to be a guest on our podcast and talk about it?" And I'm like, okay, sure.
Well, what podcast is it? And don't laugh about their podcast.
It's I want to say it's the urban garden.
So you don't know who you work for. You don't know what podcast you're going on. It's a good thing you're not in sales.
It's a good thing what?
You're not in sales.
Yeah, no. Nope. I am terrible at sales. Unless I love something and I just naturally talk about it, then that's it. So the email that I have is from the Urban Farm.
Okay.
And I told her that I built a garden at my kid's school, so she was interested in those aspects of me. So I don't know what she's going to ask me.
But it's the Urban Farm podcast.
I think
you think so. So, folks, if you want to check that out, search for that. If not, go to www.urbanfarm.com or something like that. And they're also in New York. So if you cross-reference,
no, they're not. They're in Arizona.
Oh well.
Urban Farm is Arizona.
Okay, so Arizona, and you have Urban Farm as an email address. So that's enough data points. And if you get me the information between now and drop time, I will put it into the show notes. So,
okay.
Yeah. Yeah, we're big time here. All right. Thanks again, Sharon. I appreciate your joining us. And
they're urbanfarm.org.
Urban Farm. Okay, so that means they're a tax exempt, not for profit. So it's a good cause too. All right. So look, we've done some more good here. That's amazing. All right. Well, thank you very much once again for joining us here.
Thank you so much. This was fun.
Good. All right. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah!